Hello again, and welcome back to The Lazy Scientist, your quiet corner of the internet where science drifts slowly like waves under moonlight. Tonight we're wandering into the strange, sometimes whimsical, and often baffling world of sleep across the animal kingdom. It's a place where mysteries curl up beside the familiar, where creatures nap in ways that seem impossible, and where rest itself becomes one of nature's most ingenious survival tools. Some animals snooze while gliding over oceans. Others barely sleep at all, as if they've bargained with time itself. The more you look at it, the more you realize that there is no single definition of sleep. Instead, there are endless variations on a theme, each shaped by the delicate balance between survival, energy, and the demands of the world around them. Before we wander too far, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? Some of you tune in from bustling cities, some from quiet towns where the stars still shine bright. Wherever you are, welcome. If you enjoy these slow, curious explorations into the hidden corners of nature, a gentle nudge to like this video and subscribe means more than you might imagine. It keeps this channel alive, much like a heartbeat, keeping time in the background. To those already subscribed, thank you. You're the reason these nighttime journeys continue, one quiet step at a time. I'll do my best not to make tonight's topic so captivating that you find yourself wide awake, turning each fact over in your mind like a restless dream. But if that does happen, at least you'll wake tomorrow carrying a head full of curious trivia about how animals rest, dream, and survive their nights. Let's begin with the simplest of questions. What does sleep even look like when a creature has no brain? How does an organism with no central command center slip into stillness? To understand, we need to step back and look at the essence of sleep itself. On the surface, it seems like a period of inactivity. Bodies lie still, eyes close, and the world outside is ignored. But inside the brain, a symphony of patterns continues, sometimes more mysterious than wakefulness itself. Scientists broadly divide sleep into two main states: rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, and non-REM sleep. In humans, REM is the stage most of us associate with dreaming, the vivid, sometimes bizarre theater of the mind that plays out behind closed eyelids. During REM, the brain flickers with activity, almost as if it were awake, while the eyes dart restlessly under the lids. Non-REM, by contrast, is calmer. Breathing slows, heartbeats become steady, and the brain drifts into synchronized waves of electrical activity, rolling across its surface like tides on a moonlit shore. We move back and forth between these states in repeating cycles. For humans, each cycle takes about 90 minutes, a rhythmic alternation between stillness and storm, between repair and reverie. But we are not the standard by which all creatures measure their nights. Other animals follow entirely different tempos. Cats, for example, plunge into REM far sooner after falling asleep than humans do, slipping into dream states as if they couldn't wait to begin. Certain marine mammals never surrender both halves of their brain at once, instead drifting into partial slumber while still staying alert. Across species, the cycles are shorter or longer, deeper or lighter, always tailored to the peculiar needs of survival. At the center of these patterns is the circadian rhythm, an internal clock wound tight inside almost every living being. In humans, the keeper of this clock is a cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Nestled just above the place where the optic nerves cross, it listens to the outside world, especially to light, adjusting our biological schedule with remarkable precision. As day fades, the pineal gland releases melatonin, a hormone that whispers to the body that it's time to rest. When morning arrives, light pours in through the eyes, silencing melatonin and lifting us back into wakefulness. For other animals, the rhythm is similar in principle, but vastly different in practice. Nocturnal species are wired for activity when we're drowsy. Others are crepuscular, awake at dawn and dusk. Still others are opportunists, taking short bursts of rest whenever safety allows. In every case, the body is not merely reacting, but syncing itself with the great cycles of the planet, day and night, tide and season, warmth and cold. Inside the brain, the story becomes even stranger. During deep non-REM sleep, neurons fire in slow, synchronized surges, each wave sweeping across the cortex like a silent ripple on a pond. This is the body's time for repair. Muscles knit themselves back together after strain. The immune system gathers its strength, and the brain quietly takes out the trash, flushing away waste products that accumulate during wakefulness. Then comes REM, the vivid and unpredictable stage where dreams emerge. Neurons fire rapidly, the brain warms, and centers linked to memory and emotion light up with activity. Yet the body below is held in stillness, paralyzed by a state known as atonia. It's a safety mechanism. Without it, dreamers might thrash, leap, or run in response to their visions. Cats would claw at imaginary prey, dogs would chase invisible balls, and humans might stumble out of bed. The paralysis ensures that our dreamscapes stay contained, vibrant, but harmless. The remarkable thing is how differently these cycles manifest across the animal kingdom. Some creatures seem to need little more than flickers of REM. Others dive into slow-wave sleep as if they were sinking into the depths of the ocean. Certain reptiles have been observed in states resembling REM, blurring the line between mammals, birds, and everything else. And then there are the cephalopods, octopuses and cuttlefish, who appear to enter twitching, colorful phases of rest, changing their skin patterns as if dreaming with their whole bodies. All of this reminds us that sleep is not just one thing. It's a tapestry woven from countless threads of hormones, electrical pulses, and rhythms, each stage essential, each species adapting the weave to its own survival. Like tides rising and falling, the waves of sleep carry every sleeper, human or animal, into silence, and then back into the vivid theater of dreams. But the question remains, why sleep at all? Why would evolution favor a state that seems at first glance like vulnerability incarnate? To lie still for hours, unaware of predators or opportunities, seems like the worst possible design for survival. And yet, almost every creature on Earth sleeps in some form, from the tiniest insect to whales gliding through the deep. The answer lies in the hidden work of sleep, the quiet jobs it performs while the conscious mind is away. One of the simplest explanations is energy conservation. Sleep lowers the body's demand for fuel at times when seeking food is dangerous or inefficient. In humans, body temperature dips slightly during rest, metabolism slows, and calories are burned more sparingly. For our distant ancestors, sleeping during the coldest, darkest hours meant conserving precious energy while avoiding the hazards of stumbling blindly through dangerous terrain. Even today, the daily dip in metabolic rate during sleep shows how effective this mechanism is. It is a built-in strategy to waste less when activity is unlikely to bring reward. Yet energy savings are only part of the story. The brain, it turns out, has its own reasons for sleep. During REM and deep non-REM stages, neural pathways replay and reorganize the events of the day. Laboratory rats, trained to run mazes, show brain activity during sleep that mirrors the same patterns recorded while running those mazes awake. It's as if the brain rehearses, strengthening the neural connections that store memory. Songbirds, too, practice their melodies while sleeping. Their brains fire in patterns that echo the tunes they sang during daylight, as though polishing their songs in the safety of slumber. Without these quiet rehearsals, learning slows, memory falters, and skill decays. Sleep isn't just rest, it's practice, revision, and refinement. On top of that, sleep is a time for repair. Deep non-REM stages release growth hormone, essential for healing tissues and building muscle. The immune system ramps up production of proteins that fight infection. The brain's own cleaning system, the glymphatic network, flushes away toxins and proteins linked to diseases like Alzheimer's. This process is far more active during sleep, meaning that a sleepless brain risks becoming clogged with waste. In a very real sense, sleep is housekeeping for the mind. Still, every hour spent asleep carries risk, and animals have evolved strategies to balance the need for restoration with the constant threat of danger. Grazing species like deer and horses rarely fall into deep, long sleep. Instead, they take brief naps, scattered like crumbs through the day and night, always ready to bolt at the slightest sound. Predators, by contrast, luxuriate in long stretches. Lions, confident in their power, often sleep more than 20 hours a day when food is plentiful. Each species has tuned its rest to the dangers it faces, proving that sleep is never one size fits all, but a compromise struck between body, brain, and environment. To trace the origins of sleep, we must look further back, much further. Some of the most primitive animals on Earth, jellyfish, show signs of something that looks remarkably like sleep. These creatures have no brains, only a diffuse net of nerves. And yet, at night, jellyfish pulse less frequently, responding more slowly to disturbances. Keep them active during their usual rest, and they become sluggish, less responsive the next day. This suggests that sleep, or something like it, may not have begun with complex brains at all. Instead, it could be one of the most ancient behaviors of multicellular life, a rhythm as old as the first animals themselves. This idea that sleep predates complex nervous systems changes how we see it. Rest may have begun not as a luxury of advanced minds, but as a necessity of simple bodies, a way to coordinate activity with the cycles of day and night, light and dark. Over millions of years, it evolved into the rich, layered, and endlessly varied phenomenon we see in mammals, birds, reptiles, and cephalopods. Sleep may not have one single purpose. It is a bundle of functions woven together into a nightly ritual, a rhythm that every living thing honors in its own way. Energy conservation, memory consolidation, tissue repair, immune defense, and evolutionary timing all converge into something so essential that no creature, no matter how humble or mighty, can do without it for long. What seems like stillness is in fact survival at work. For most of us, sleep feels like an all-or-nothing state. We close both eyes, let the brain sink away, and surrender completely to unconsciousness. But nature is not bound by our rules. Out in the open ocean, above mountain ranges, and along restless shorelines, some animals have evolved a remarkable compromise. They let only half their brains sleep at a time. This is unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, a strange trick where one hemisphere drifts into rest while the other stays awake, scanning for threats, guiding movement, and keeping vital functions alive. Dolphins are perhaps the most famous masters of this split-mind slumber. Unlike us, they cannot rely on automatic breathing to keep them alive. Every breath must be deliberate. Falling fully unconscious could mean sinking or drowning. Instead, dolphins let one hemisphere rest while the other stays alert, ensuring they swim slowly to the surface for air. The open eye, connected to the awake hemisphere, remains watchful, scanning the water. After a time, the roles reverse, allowing each side of the brain its share of recovery. Whales use similar tactics, some floating just below the surface in what researchers call logging, their vast bodies drifting like tree trunks on the sea. Others rest vertically in the water, like massive pillars. One hemisphere slumbers, the other monitors the world. For mothers and calves, the system is even more fluid. Young calves must breathe more often, so mothers swim almost continuously during the early weeks, guiding their offspring in a rolling rhythm where neither is ever fully at rest, but both share enough recovery to keep moving forward. The skies tell the same story. Great frigate birds, able to soar for weeks without landing, dip into sleep while aloft. Their long wings lock into place, gliding on currents while one hemisphere slips into slow wave patterns. Sometimes, both hemispheres close down for only seconds, just long enough to refresh before the world demands attention again. Ducks on a shoreline take turns with this trick too. Those at the center of the flock close both eyes. Those at the edges leave the outward-facing eye open, scanning for predators, switching roles in shifts. Sleep in these cases becomes not stillness, but vigilance, a balance between the body's need to recover and the environment's demand for caution. The mechanics are extraordinary. In most vertebrate brains, the left and right hemispheres are connected by fibers that allow them to coordinate. In unihemispheric sleep, the two sides become semi-independent. One hemisphere drifts into the synchronized, slow waves of deep rest, while the other stays busy with the irregular chatter of wakefulness. Because this is not REM, there is no paralysis. The awake side commands the body to swim, fly, or stand guard. The open eye belongs to that side, feeding in vital information. In dolphins, it is often oriented toward the pod, maintaining social contact. In birds, it faces outward, keeping watch for threats. This is sleep boiled down to its most efficient essence: rest without blindness, vigilance without exhaustion. Why would evolution shape such a bizarre arrangement? For ocean mammals, the answer is clear. Breathing must be managed. Predators lurk in every shadow, and drifting too far could mean death. For birds, the endless expanse of sea or desert offers no safe landing, so gliding naps are the only option. For flocking ducks or seals at the shoreline, it is a communal survival strategy. Rest while your neighbor keeps guard, then switch roles. The fact that so many unrelated species develop the same adaptation is a classic case of convergent evolution. Faced with the same problem, how to rest without becoming vulnerable, nature sculpted the same solution over and over again. But some animals go even further. They abandon the idea of long stretches of rest entirely and survive instead on moments, fleeting fragments of sleep scattered through the day and night. These are the micronappers. The great frigate bird again leads the way. Scientists fitted them with lightweight recorders, finding that their mid-flight naps sometimes lasted only a few seconds, just long enough for a hemisphere or both to flicker briefly into rest before waking again. Imagine living your life on power naps measured not in minutes, but in heartbeats. Swifts may do the same, spending months in the air. Seals and sea lions bob at the surface, alternating short naps with wakeful swims. These fragments add up, creating a mosaic of rest. The brain, astonishingly, can gather enough recovery from seconds-long moments to function across long migrations or constant risks. Why does this work? Because sleep is flexible. What matters most is not how sleep is packaged, but how its essential ingredients, slow wave recovery, memory rehearsal, tissue repair, are distributed over time. Humans crave consolidated blocks. But other species are just as restored by fragments spread thinly through the day. It is the difference between feasting and snacking. Both can sustain you, provided the total nourishment is enough. Studying these patterns is no small feat. Scientists attach tiny EEG devices, waterproof trackers, and motion sensors to birds, seals, and even whales, trying to map brainwaves against body movement. In the case of frigate birds, brain scans aligned with GPS data revealed that they slept for only minutes each day while flying, compared to hours once they landed. For seals, depth sensors revealed naps timed to surfacing for breath. It's like piecing together the secret schedules of animals who cannot afford to lie down, close both eyes, and drift into vulnerability. What all this tells us is that sleep is not a weakness, but a negotiation. Each species bends the rules, tweaks the rhythms, and carves its own version of rest from the demands of its world. Some luxuriate in hours of deep slumber, safe in dens or protected by strength. Others live on seconds stolen mid-flight, half minds drifting in sync with the air. Even jellyfish, with no brain at all, pulse more slowly in the dark, proving that the impulse to rest is older than thought itself. For us, the nightly act of shutting down feels inevitable. We find a bed, close our eyes, and let the brain slip away into its cycles. But the animal kingdom reveals that sleep can be anything but predictable. Can be a brain split in two, an eye always open, or a body suspended in the water like a pillar. Can be stitched together from fragments so small you'd miss them if you blinked. It can even exist without a brain, carried out by nerve nets older than memory. Sleep, then, is not just a human ritual or even a mammalian one. It is one of life's most enduring rhythms, a reminder that survival depends not only on movement and wakefulness, but also on stillness. Across the planet, creatures nap, dream, twitch, glide, hover, float, and hang upside down in pursuit of the same thing: recovery. For them, as for us, sleep is not wasted time. It is the quiet foundation on which every waking moment depends. So tonight, as you close your eyes and drift toward your own dreams, remember that out there in the forests, skies, and seas, countless creatures are doing the same in their own peculiar ways. Some rest deeply, some lightly, some in fragments, some with half a brain still humming. Together they form a vast, hidden chorus, each following rhythms shaped by evolution, stitched into the turning of the earth. Sleep is not uniform, and that is its wonder. It is proof that life, in all its forms, knows when to pause, when to heal, and when to let the mind wander into the mystery of dreams. That long, deep stretches of slumber are the only path to restoration is a belief rooted in human perspective. But nature, endlessly inventive, shows us otherwise. In the realm of micronaps, survival is measured not in hours, but in seconds. Imagine the frigate bird coasting effortlessly above endless swells, its wings locked while its brain snatches brief moments of rest. Picture the swift, cutting through twilight, its tiny body carried by momentum, while one hemisphere of the mind sleeps. Or a seal, rising and falling with the tide, dipping into recovery before waking to scan for threats. These snapshots reveal a profound truth. Sleep does not need to arrive in one continuous stretch to work. For creatures living in worlds where danger never truly sleeps and the demands of travel never pause, rest comes in carefully timed sips, quick, efficient, and just enough to keep the mind alert and the body steady. What may look to us like compromise is in fact refinement. Micronapping is not the failure to achieve full rest. It is the optimization of rest itself, shaped by pressures of survival. Where we might imagine exhaustion gnawing away at strength, these animals transform every passing moment into opportunity. A heartbeat's pause becomes a reset. A few seconds of stillness renews enough to keep going. It is sleep reduced to its most essential form, carved by evolution into something precise and indispensable. And within this shifting picture of how animals sleep lies one of the greatest enigmas of all, dreaming. That strange inner theater where scenes unfold without an audience, where memory, imagination, and instinct blur together. In humans, our most vivid dreams emerge during rapid eye movement sleep, when brain activity suddenly surges into patterns strikingly similar to waking consciousness. Yet dreaming, it seems, is not reserved for us alone. Across the animal kingdom, the signs are unmistakable. Mammals display twitching paws, flicking ears, murmurs and soft whimpers that betray unseen adventures. A sleeping cat may pounce through a phantom meadow, its whiskers trembling in rhythm with its dream prey. A dog sprawled on the floor yips softly, its legs paddling as though sprinting through remembered fields. Beneath the surface, their brains light up in familiar patterns, echoing the very same neural activity seen in wakefulness. Experiments confirm this. When rats trained to run a maze fall asleep, their neurons fire in precisely the same sequences as they did while navigating the twists and turns earlier. It is as though the brain cannot resist rehearsing the day's challenges, reinforcing connections that memory depends on. Birds, too, enter dreamlike states, though their episodes are fleeting. A pigeon might experience only a few seconds of rapid eye movement sleep at a time. But within those moments, its eyes flicker and its head shifts in subtle bursts. Songbirds provide the clearest evidence. Zebra finches, studied closely, reveal neural activity during rest that matches the intricate patterns they use to sing. It suggests that the night is not silent for them after all, that within the stillness of their small bodies, the melodies of their species are being practiced and polished, one phrase at a time. Even reptiles, once thought excluded from such mental landscapes, now seem to share in them. Research on Australian dragons, small hardy lizards, has shown alternating states, one resembling REM. This discovery pushes the evolutionary roots of dreaming far deeper than scientists once imagined, back hundreds of millions of years. If lizards dream, then perhaps dreaming is not a new trick of mammalian brains, but an ancient inheritance, shared across distant lineages. And in the oceans, the story grows stranger still. Cephalopods such as octopuses and cuttlefish enter phases of rest where their very skin betrays what might be inner visions. Colors ripple rapidly across their bodies, pale to mottled, mottled to striped, striped to vibrant flashes. Their arms curl, unfurl, twitch in rhythms that suggest more than reflex. Some researchers speculate that these shifts reflect dream imagery, phantom hunts, lurking predators, the flickering light of reefs recalled in sleep. While certainty eludes us, the evidence is tantalizing. Here are animals whose very bodies become canvases of their minds, painting scenes we cannot see. What exactly do these dreams serve? Theories abound. Perhaps they are training grounds, where predators rehearse hunting techniques and prey refine responses to danger. Perhaps they are workshops of memory, organizing and strengthening essential experiences while discarding the trivial. In every case, what emerges is a picture of sleep not as empty time, but as an active, dynamic process. The sleeping body may lie still, but the mind continues to work, consolidating, simulating, preparing. The diversity of dreaming across species suggests its profound evolutionary significance. The presence of REM-like states in mammals, birds, reptiles, and cephalopods hints at an ancient origin preserved not by chance, but because it offers critical advantages. Whether sharpening memory, refining skills, or stabilizing emotions, these inner rehearsals seem to matter deeply to survival. From a finch practicing its song to a dog reliving a chase, from a rat retracing a maze to an octopus flashing colors of remembered seas, dreams are a bridge between the past and the possibilities of tomorrow. And if dreaming is one of sleep's strangest frontiers, then the sheer variability in how much sleep creatures need is one of its greatest surprises. In our own world, 4 hours of rest feels like deprivation, a schedule fit only for emergencies. But in nature, there are giants that thrive on less than half of that, not for days, but for entire lifetimes. Giraffes stand as the most striking example. For years, observers thought they scarcely slept at all. Modern studies have refined the numbers, but the truth is no less astonishing. Giraffes average somewhere between half an hour and 2 hours of rest in a full day. Most of this comes in fleeting bursts, lasting just minutes. Often, they remain standing, their long legs braced as their heads dip into brief stillness. Occasionally, they fold down in a remarkable pose, curling their long necks to rest their heads on their hips, a posture that seems improbable, yet strangely serene. These rare episodes of deeper sleep last only a few minutes before the animal rouses again. For a creature living on open plains with predators ever near, such vigilance is essential. Elephants share a similar frugality with rest. Wild African elephants average around 2 hours of sleep daily, sometimes going for entire days without measurable rest. They most often remain standing, dipping into shallow non-REM phases, while the deeper states that include REM occur only when they lie down, a rarity in their constant cycles of foraging and migration. Their survival depends on movement, vigilance, and an almost relentless demand for food. With size as their shield, they sacrifice the comfort of long sleep, trading it for constant awareness. In fact, elephants hold the record for the least daily sleep of any mammal studied to date. Migratory birds also test the limits of how little sleep life can manage. The great frigate bird, already known for its micronaps mid-flight, cuts its daily sleep to a fraction of what it enjoys on land during long journeys. Some species slash both REM and non-REM rest, deferring recovery until migration ends. Their brains adapt, making each brief episode of rest count with extraordinary efficiency. For us, such deprivation would be crippling. Memory falters, coordination unravels, the immune system weakens. Yet these animals seem unharmed. The secret may lie in how their rest is structured. Giraffes, elephants, and migratory birds condense the most restorative stages into short, concentrated bursts. Every minute of sleep they take is dense with recovery. Their brains may also allow for local rest, tiny regions slipping into slow-wave activity while the animal remains otherwise awake. In this way, the brain recuperates in fragments, distributing recovery throughout the day. Metabolism plays a role as well. Both giraffes and elephants possess relatively slow metabolic rates for their size, reducing the need for prolonged rest. Their sheer bulk also deters predators, granting them the freedom to sleep lightly without succumbing to exhaustion. For birds, drastic sleep reduction is a temporary trade-off, one that prioritizes survival in the moment over recovery, which can wait until safer conditions return. The lesson from these sleepless giants and tireless travelers is clear. Sleep is not a rigid rule, but a flexible resource. For humans, it often arrives in long blocks. For giraffes, elephants, and certain birds, it comes in fragments. In each case, it is tailored to the demands of life. Sleep is not simply the absence of wakefulness. It is a tool, wielded in whatever form the body requires to endure. Sleep, for most of us, is defined by stillness, a body reclined, muscles slack, eyes closed. Yet for some creatures, stopping entirely is a luxury they cannot afford. Their survival depends on movement, constant, deliberate, unbroken. And so evolution has given them an extraordinary compromise: the ability to rest without halting. Dolphins are perhaps the most famous masters of this feat. As voluntary breathers, they cannot rely on unconscious reflex to sustain them through the night. Every inhalation must be chosen, every surfacing deliberate. Complete unconsciousness would be fatal. Their solution is unihemispheric, slow-wave sleep, where one half of the brain plunges into rest, while the other remains awake enough to guide steady swimming. The closed eye signals the hemisphere at rest. The open eye belongs to the side that keeps watch. After a stretch of time, the roles switch, ensuring both halves receive their due. A dolphin in this state glides with calm precision, rising rhythmically to breathe, then sinking quietly beneath the surface again. To watch is to see a body in effortless balance, half in dreams, half in the world. Whales share this remarkable adaptation. Some rest vertically, their immense forms suspended like pillars in a cathedral of blue. Others drift just beneath the surface, appearing like logs adrift on a current. In each case, one hemisphere remains alert, handling the vital task of surfacing for air and scanning for threats. Mothers with calves must go further still. For weeks after birth, whale mothers swim almost continuously, guiding their young while both mother and calf alternate shallow rest, never succumbing to full unconsciousness. Survival here is as much about vigilance as it is about recovery. High above the oceans, the skies host their own half-brain sleepers. Migratory birds like the great frigate bird can remain aloft for weeks, covering thousands of kilometers without landfall. Sleep for them comes in fleeting moments, often only seconds long, where one hemisphere closes down while the other remains tuned to balance, navigation, and the shifting air. On occasion, both hemispheres may dip into rest simultaneously, though never for long. The open eye, connected to the alert hemisphere, keeps watch for companions, distant land, or the glimmer of a storm. Ground-dwelling birds display a different but equally ingenious pattern: in flux. Those at the edges often sleep with one eye open, keeping their outward-facing hemisphere awake to guard against predators. Then, with a shuffle of positions, the watch shifts, and another sentinel takes their place. Sleep becomes not just recovery, but community defense. Even in the deep, where currents move ceaselessly, some sharks rely on partial rest. Species that must swim constantly to breathe, like great whites, cannot afford stillness. Instead, their brains enter reduced states of responsiveness while their bodies continue their steady circuits, guided by reflexive neural circuits rather than full conscious control. It is a form of sleep distributed between body and brain, never complete, but always enough to endure. These strategies remind us that sleep is not a fixed condition, but a spectrum, adapted endlessly to circumstance. For dolphins and whales, It is the balance between breath and slumber. For birds, the compromise between vigilance and restoration. For sharks, the marriage of motion and reduced awareness. Each case reveals sleep as a fluid process, reconfigured to serve survival in environments where stillness would mean danger. And not all adaptations concern motion. Some involve posture, resting in ways that to human eyes seem improbable, even absurd. Flamingos, for instance, often sleep standing on one leg, the other tucked beneath them. What seems like precarious balance is, in fact, effortless. Their joints lock into place, requiring no muscular strain. Why they do it is still debated, but the leading theory suggests thermoregulation, minimizing heat loss to the water beneath them by lifting one leg at a time. What appears to us as an act of concentration is, for them, a mechanism of efficiency. Bats turn gravity itself on its head, hanging upside down. They rest with ease thanks to tendons in their feet that automatically tighten under their body weight. No effort is required to cling to a ceiling beam or cave roof. Even in death, some remain hanging until disturbed. This inverted posture provides protection from predators and an easy launch for flight. What looks strange to us is for them perfect design. Sloths, meanwhile, spend much of their lives suspended from branches. Curved claws and specialized tendons allow them to dangle securely with little effort. They sleep draped against trunks, curled over branches, or hanging entirely upside down. To predators, they are nearly invisible, a bundle of fur indistinguishable from leaves and moss. Their very posture is camouflage, rest and defense woven together. Owls add yet another variation. Tucking their heads backward beneath their wings, they appear twisted and vulnerable. Yet this pose conserves heat and shields their faces. Tendon locks in their feet keep them anchored to branches, even in gusting winds. For them, sleep perched in the open is no riskier than it is for us tucked safely in bed. Each of these positions, whether balancing, hanging, suspending, or twisting, illustrates how posture itself becomes part of sleep's adaptation. Energy conservation, camouflage, and readiness are all built into the body's mechanics. Where humans see contortion, animals reveal design. But some adaptations go further still, reshaping sleep itself into seasonal rhythms. In climates of scarcity and cold, certain animals retreat into states beyond ordinary slumber, hibernation, and torpor. These are not simply deeper forms of sleep, but physiological slowdowns of astonishing scale. True hibernators, like ground squirrels, drop their body temperature nearly to the freezing point of their burrows, slow their hearts to a faint beat, and breathe only sparingly. For weeks or months, they survive in a suspended state, waking only occasionally to shift position or nibble at stored food. In contrast, bears enter something closer to extended torpor. Their body temperatures dip only slightly, and they can wake more readily if disturbed. For them, it is less about vanishing into oblivion, and more about conserving energy while remaining ready to act. Even the smallest creatures harness this trick. Hummingbirds, whose metabolisms burn like furnaces, cannot survive nights without food unless they enter torpor. Each evening, their bodies cool, their heart rates plummet, and their energy needs drop dramatically, allowing them to endure until dawn. For them, torpor is not seasonal, but nightly, an indispensable tool for survival. The principle extends beyond cold. In deserts, animals practice aestivation, a similar state of slowed metabolism triggered not by freezing temperatures, but by heat and drought. Here, energy is saved by waiting out the worst conditions, the body conserving resources until the world outside is once again hospitable. Whether in hibernation, torpor, or aestivation, the underlying theme is the same. Sleep is not a passive escape, but an active adaptation, tuned precisely to environmental demands. These states blur the line between life and dormancy, showing us that sleep, in its most extreme forms, can carry creatures through months of scarcity without collapse. And then, there are the sleepers of the underwater world, creatures for whom the very act of resting must contend with currents, oxygen flow, and buoyancy. Fish, lacking eyelids, cannot close their eyes, so sleep is marked not by appearance but by behavior. Many slip into states of reduced activity, hovering in sheltered crevices or drifting gently with the tide. Some, like parrotfish, secrete mucus cocoons around themselves, shielding against parasites and hiding their scent from predators. Amphibians, living between two worlds, vary even further. Frogs may sink into underwater rest, their bodies still, their responses dulled, balancing survival against the risks of submersion. The common thread in all these examples, whether giraffe, dolphin, flamingo, bat, bear, or fish, is that sleep bends, stretches, and reshapes itself to fit the needs of survival. It is never wasted, never arbitrary. In some forms, it is deep and prolonged. In others, fleeting and fragmented. Sometimes it is woven into movement, sometimes into posture, sometimes into entire seasons. But always, its essence remains. The body and brain finding the space to recover, to repair, to prepare for what comes next. Far from being a single, uniform state, sleep emerges as a mosaic, varied, flexible, endlessly creative. Each adaptation is a reminder that rest is not a weakness, but a strategy, as vital to survival as food, water, or air. For humans, it is 8 hours in a bed. For a giraffe, it is minutes stolen on the open plain. For a dolphin, it is half a brain at a time beneath the moonlit sea. For a hummingbird, it is a nightly plunge into torpor. And for a fish, it is stillness in the currents, eyes open but mind subdued. Sleep in all its forms is not just the absence of wakefulness. It is life's most ancient rhythm, endlessly reimagined. Beneath the surface, life continues in rhythms that look quiet to us, but hold within them finely tuned balances. Aquatic frogs settle into the stillness of shallow bottoms, or among strands of plants, surfacing only when they must. Salamanders lie beneath stones or logs, their movements slowed to a near hush, conserving energy as their small hearts beat with measured calm. These creatures remind us that sleep is not always about a warm den or a hidden roost. It can happen anywhere. Survival allows, even in the cold silence beneath a layer of water. For turtles, sleep has its own peculiar grace. Freshwater species can spend hours submerged, slowing their metabolism until the oxygen drawn across the lining of their throats and cloaca is enough to sustain them. Sea turtles slip into rock crevices or under coral ledges, bodies pressed into shelter where currents flow gently past. In those protected alcoves, they may remain still for hours, each heartbeat drawn out, every breath postponed, until their reserves demand the surface. Crocodilians, more wary, more predatory, practice a lighter version. They float with nostrils and eyes above the waterline, bodies suspended and still, or rest on sandy bottoms of shallow rivers, alert enough to rise quickly at the faintest hint of disturbance. The choice of where and how to rest reflects trade-offs in still lagoons or quiet bends. The body conserves more energy, free of the strain of fighting currents. In running waters, rest must be more shallow, punctuated by occasional fin flicks or adjustments to keep balance. Some species discover shelter in eddies behind rocks, where flow weakens, allowing them to drift with less effort. Others take advantage of the current itself, surrendering to its steady push, turning rest into motion, much like a person floating along the lazy bed of a river. Oxygen defines the limits of these aquatic rests. In warm waters, dissolved oxygen is scarce, and metabolism runs faster, shortening the time a sleeper can linger. In colder seas, oxygen saturates more fully, and metabolic rates drop, extending the window of rest. A turtle in chilly waters can remain submerged for hours. In tropical shallows, its naps are briefer, its trips to the surface more frequent. For sharks that require constant flow across their gills, rest cannot mean stillness. They maintain a slow, steady swimming rhythm, reducing responsiveness, but never ceasing their movement. It is a delicate negotiation between the brain's need for quiet and the body's demand for oxygen. From the outside, these underwater rests can appear tranquil, almost sculptural. A turtle wedged into coral, immobile but alive. A school of fish suspended mid-water, their bodies aligned like lanterns hanging in dim light. A salamander beneath a veil of mossy plants, as if carved from the water itself. It is a reminder that sleep is not an indulgence, but a universal need, shaped and constrained by each environment. Even where currents never stop and predators always linger, life finds ways to carve out stillness in motion. On the seafloor, in the quiet glow of mangroves and lagoons, even stranger sleepers emerge. The upside-down jellyfish, Cassiopeia, lies with its pale bell pressed against the sand, frilly arms reaching upward like living flowers. Within those arms live tiny algae that trade sugars for shelter. And to keep that partnership thriving, the jellyfish pulses gently, stirring water through the forest of tentacles. By day, this rhythm ensures that light reaches the algae, fueling photosynthesis. But when night settles, the pattern changes. The pulsing slows, the posture slackens, and the responsiveness wanes. To a casual glance, it might seem like nothing. To a biologist, it looks like sleep. At night, when nudged by currents or disturbed by shadows, Cassiopeia responds sluggishly, raising its arousal threshold as if the outside world has grown more distant. This state is reversible in seconds, the hallmark of genuine sleep-like behavior. Disturb the jellyfish long enough, and the next day its quiescence deepens, a rebound effect, remarkably like the sleep debt seen in mammals and birds. And here is the most striking part. This creature has no brain. Its control is spread across a diffuse nerve net, woven into its body, with small clusters of pacemaker-like structures arranged in a ring around its bell. Together, they orchestrate contractions in loose synchrony, maintaining the body's pulse. At night, the system dials itself down, a collective decision without a central command, yet unmistakably sleep in form and function. Why should something so simple need rest? Energy is one answer. When the algae inside stop producing sugars in the dark, constant pulsing yields little benefit. Stillness conserves energy when the cost outweighs the return. Maintenance is another. Neurons, even in a scattered net, burn fuel and accumulate waste. Sleep-like quiescence allows time for ionic resets, for clearing metabolites, for subtle recalibrations of timing between pacemakers. It is a molecular housekeeping shift, dressed as stillness. Perhaps the most profound implication lies in what this tells us about evolution. If jellyfish, creatures that diverged hundreds of millions of years ago, with no brains, no complex sensory organs, display states recognizably like sleep, then sleep is not the invention of higher animals. It is older, more primal, a cellular strategy rather than a cortical luxury. Life discovered the value of rest before it discovered the brain. As dawn breaks, the lagoon stirs, and Cassiopeia's pulse resumes. The algae begin their photosynthesis, and the partnership wakes together. To us, it is only a jellyfish returning to motion. To nature, it is proof that the roots of sleep reach deeper into history than we once believed. Insects extend the story in miniature. Watch a honeybee at night, tucked in a corner of the hive. Its legs sag slightly, antennae drooped in a telltale sign, and its arousal threshold rises. It will take firmer vibrations, stronger light, or more intrusive touch to rouse it. If the bee is kept from this rest, the next opportunity brings compensation, longer bouts of antennae-down stillness, as if the insect is paying back what it lost. Within a hive, rest is staggered. Nurse bees working brood sleep in scattered bouts, never shutting down entirely. Older foragers sleep in longer stretches, mostly at night. Drones, free of heavy duties, indulge in longer naps. Outside, solitary males clamp their jaws to stems, hanging like ornaments in the twilight. Bumblebees sometimes doze inside flowers, dusted with pollen, caught between feeding and sleep. Why does this matter? Because bees depend on memory and timing. Their foraging days demand precision. Landmarks, scents, and sun angles, all stitched into a mental map. At day's end, that information must be consolidated. If bees are deprived of rest, their famous waggle dance suffers. Angles skew, timing drifts, and their ability to recruit nestmates falters. After a good night, the accuracy sharpens again, proof that sleep stabilizes their inner compass. The mushroom bodies of insect brains, centers of memory, learning, and attention, seem to be the stage where this happens. Synapses strengthen by day, then recalibrate by night, trimming excess and refining patterns. It is the same principle seen in mammals, scaled down to a brain of modest size, but no less importance. Much of what we know comes from the humble fruit fly, tracked in labs by its movements in narrow tubes crossed by beams of light. 5 minutes of stillness, coupled with higher arousal thresholds and rebound when disturbed, define its sleep. Even here, structure emerges. Short siestas in warm afternoons, longer, deeper bouts at night, cycles shaped by circadian clocks. Genetic tweaks can shatter or extend these rhythms, pointing to molecular gears shared across the animal kingdom. Sleep, even in the smallest creatures, is no idle drift. It is a necessity. For bees, it sharpens the dance that guides their hive. For flies, it cements memory of odors or courtship cues. For ants, it steadies the navigation of endless tunnels. Scale down the brain, and the importance of sleep only becomes clearer. Small circuits cannot afford inefficiency. Rest is how clarity is maintained. And across colonies, coordination emerges. In ants, rest is scattered, tiny naps woven throughout day and night. But with thousands of workers, those naps overlap, ensuring the colony never collapses into silence. Bees, too, stagger their rest. Nurses, drones, and foragers, balancing duty and recovery so that the hive runs without pause. Sleep at the group level becomes a mosaic, each individual trading brief stillness for collective continuity. From jellyfish nerve nets to the waggle dance of bees, from the still turtle on a seabed to the restless fruit fly in a glass tube, the message echoes: sleep is not a luxury. It is a necessity woven into the very machinery of life. Across the animal kingdom, the story of sleep always comes back to the same tension: recovery versus risk. Every creature must navigate that balance, surrendering awareness just enough to restore body and brain. yet never so deeply that danger goes unnoticed. The strategies they adopt, from the most primitive to the most complex, reflect where they fall along this line between safety and peril. In sheltered places, sleep stretches luxuriously. Lions, secure in their prides and often with bellies full, sleep for more than half the day. Their dens and territories buffer them against threats, allowing deep, consolidated rest, filled with slow waves and dream-rich REM. Bats roosting in caves, suspended upside down in clusters, enjoy the same privilege. In dark, stable caverns where predators rarely intrude, they can let go completely. For small burrowing mammals, rodents in hidden warrens, meerkats huddled in fortified dens, the earth itself offers safety, and with it comes the gift of deeper, more continuous sleep. When the refuge is secure, physiology reflects it. Longer stretches of slow-wave activity, larger doses of REM, steadier breathing and heart rhythms. Contrast that with the exposed sleepers. Antelope, zebras, and deer bed down on open plains, their ears in constant motion, swiveling like radar dishes. Horses, too, rest while standing, locking their limbs so they can nap without collapsing, their posture ready to bolt at the first alarm. Zebras and wildebeest fragment their rest into short intervals, scattered across the day, often while others graze or watch. Giraffes, towering above grass, with few places to hide, sleep so briefly it seems impossible, minutes at a time, often standing, with only rare moments of deeper rest when folded awkwardly onto the ground. For them, vigilance outweighs luxury. They sacrifice depth for readiness, their sleep broken but functional. Birds mirror this balance. Ducks at the edges of a flock sleep one-eyed, the outward-facing hemisphere awake, the inward one resting. The rotation of sentry roles ensures the group as a whole remains protected. Songbirds, perched in open branches, tuck their heads beneath wings, but their rest is light and fragmented, every rustle or flicker of light pulling them back to wakefulness. Yet in denser reeds, cliff ledges, or tree cavities, their sleep deepens, episodes lengthen, and their vigilance finally relaxes. The architecture of sleep itself bends to the environment. Safe places yield richer sleep. Exposed places demand lighter, shallower cycles. The depth of rest is not fixed, even within a species. Seasons, life stages, and circumstances change the equation. Breeding demands often push sleep into the background. Male pectoral sandpipers in the Arctic remain awake nearly around the clock during brief mating windows, sacrificing rest for the chance to pass on their genes. Astonishingly, those that sleep the least often sire the most offspring, showing that sometimes reproduction trumps restoration. Incubating birds accept shallow, fragmented sleep as they guard eggs. Colonial seabirds with chicks wedge in moments of rest between feedings, waking at the faintest brush of a wing. In mammals, parental demands reshape sleep even more dramatically. Dolphin mothers and calves swim nearly nonstop for weeks, alternating hemispheres of rest while remaining in motion. Fur seal mothers sleep unihemispherically at sea, adjusting their patterns between water and land depending on where they rear their young. Ground-dwelling mammals, like gazelles, lighten their sleep during fawning seasons, bedding down where visibility is widest, trading comfort for awareness. Group living shifts the balance yet again. Safety is shared and vigilance distributed. Zebras arrange themselves so that every direction is covered by alert eyes. Ants and bees fragment their rest, but across thousands of individuals, the colony hums steadily, never fully dormant. Meerkats post sentinels, while others nap at burrow entrances. Ducks form rings, the outer line half awake, while the inner circle rests. Even fish, schooling in dim waters, drift in coordinated formations, bodies aligned so that motion and position themselves provide protection. Sleep here becomes not just an individual act, but part of a social contract. Each creature takes its turn at rest while others stand guard. Predators and prey alike, solitary hunters and hive dwellers, amphibians, birds, mammals, and insects, all reveal the same principle. Sleep is flexible, not fixed. It adapts endlessly to pressures of danger, scarcity, climate, and need. The stages may look different: REM, slow wave, quiescence, but the trade-off remains constant. How much risk can be afforded? How much rest must be taken? Where safety is abundant, sleep flourishes. Where danger is constant, sleep pares itself down to fragments, moments, or even just half a brain at a time. The result is a spectrum of strategies, each one sculpted by the demands of survival. In the dark of a den, a lion dreams. In the light of an Arctic summer, a sandpiper stays awake. In the open ocean, a dolphin drifts half asleep, one eye open to the waves. In a hive, bees droop their antennae and strengthen tomorrow's map. And in the quiet of a lagoon, a jellyfish without a brain pulses slower, proving that sleep is not about dreams or thoughts. It is about life itself, pausing just long enough to endure. Safety is never just about walls and teeth. It is also about familiarity, company, and the subtle reassurance of place. Among primates, the geometry of risk becomes vivid. Baboons that return night after night to the same cliff ledges or sturdy trees show longer, more consolidated bouts of rest. The rock face becomes a trusted blanket, the branches a fortress of memory. Shift them suddenly to a new sleeping site, and the difference is stark. Minutes of sleep shrink, awakenings spike, and only after repeated nights in the new place do their bodies dare to loosen. Monkeys perched on thin branches high above the forest floor sleep lighter than their cousins curled in thick crowns or woven vines. The tension of a poor foothold tugging against deeper waves of slumber. And it is not just about the trees. It is also about who is near. A primate, flanked by trusted allies, sleeps longer, wakes less often, and lets its brain slip further into the rhythms of slow waves and REM. But push that same individual to the edge of the group, and the picture changes. The vigilance of the margins keeps sleep shallow. In other words, safety is a fact, but it is also a feeling. When the body believes it is protected, the brain dares to rest more deeply. Predators are often painted as carefree sleepers, while prey are cast as the restless ones, but reality blurs those lines. A lion on the edge of a contested boundary dozes fitfully, rising at the faintest scent of a rival pride. A snowshoe hare, buried beneath a cushion of snow, can sink into steadier rest than a deer exposed in an open field. Even top hunters are vulnerable when habitat shifts the odds. Coastal wolves living near human disturbance sleep more lightly, waking at odd hours, while a fox curled snug in a hidden den enjoys a richer stretch of rest. The label of predator or prey does not decide the quality of sleep. The true arbiter is geometry. What can reach you? From how many directions and how fast? Despite all this variation, the need underneath does not change. Brains demand slow waves to recalibrate synapses and sweep away molecular clutter. Bodies require the hormonal pulses, the immune system tuning, the quiet repair work that runs best when muscles slacken and responsiveness fades. Even in dangerous times, animals do not abandon sleep entirely. They trim it, fragment it, dilute it into many shallow sips. They pay just enough of the debt to stay sharp, stacking short bouts into something workable until the chance for deeper rest finally arrives. When that window opens, they take it. Bouts lengthen, stages deepen, and the body seizes its chance to restore. Sleep is elastic, bending to ecology, to safety, to circumstance, but never breaking. Night itself is rarely quiet. The darkness hums with crickets and frogs, with rustles of mammals and the staccato clicks of bats. For humans, such noise would be a torment. For animals, it is simply the atmosphere of life. The trick is not silence, but predictability. A steady chorus can fade into the background, a heartbeat of the landscape. The nervous system, tuned by millions of years of practice, learns to let the familiar roll past while keeping a sentinel circuit ready for anything odd. A strange rhythm, an unexpected pitch, the abrupt hush of voices that should still be singing. Those are the signals that matter. Take crickets. A male rubs wing against wing, scraper against file, producing pulses that rise into the night. The frequency is tuned for distance, carrying his advertisement and challenge across the meadow. Around him, hundreds more do the same, a swelling chorus that fills the dark. To us, it would sound deafening, but to the crickets themselves, it is wallpaper. Their auditory systems filter their own species' rhythms, preserving sensitivity instead for the sudden ultrasonic squeak of a bat diving. That note cuts through everything, commanding instant action. The drone of neighbors becomes safety itself, a steady pulse that says the world is ordinary. Frogs offer the aquatic version. A breeding pond at night can sound like a riot. Croaks, trills, peeps, and booms overlapping in wild cacophony. Yet frogs still sleep. Their ears are split into two ranges, low and high, each tuned to their own calls and to the signatures of predators. Brainstem circuits dampen their sensitivity to self-generated notes, while preserving vigilance for the unfamiliar. Hours of rolling chorus become a pond's background hum, and the frog's arousal threshold climbs accordingly. A sudden rustle, a new rhythm, or a shadow on the water pulls them back to alertness. But the endless chant of neighbors fades into the pond's heartbeat. Nocturnal mammals, too, sleep amid noise. A cave full of bats is never silent. Their echolocation clicks beat against stone in constant waves. Rodent nests murmur with squeaks and scuffles. In tree hollows, chatter and rustle never truly stop. Yet, rest happens anyway, made possible by evolved software and clever mechanics. In bats, middle ear muscles contract during each call, dampening the eardrum so the animal does not deafen itself, while auditory pathways turn down sensitivity at the instant of vocalization before snapping back to catch the echo. In rodents, predictable nest sounds fade into the background as novelty detectors flag only what is strange. Silence, paradoxically, can be more alarming than sound, because silence might mean predators are near. For these animals, steady noise is a lullaby. Where they sleep often shapes the sound itself. Burrows soften distant thunder and wind, but magnify the scrape of a nearby intruder. Tree cavities mute the general forest chorus, while letting through the vibration of claws on bark. Reed beds blur far-off calls, yet amplify footsteps into rustles. Birds tuck their heads beneath wings, not only for warmth, but also to muffle sound in one ear, reducing startle from constant noise. Seabirds rest on ledges or beaches, where the surf provides a steady roar, a blanket of broadband sound that masks faint disturbances, but still lets the sharp slap of a nearby wave cut through. Brains help by altering the gates. In deeper sleep stages, sensory signals are filtered more strongly. The thalamus lets fewer messages through, and the cortex learns to ignore repetition, staying suspicious only of change. In lighter sleep, the gate stays half open, letting the world in more readily. Specialized adaptations add another layer of control. Frog hair cells can alter their sensitivity. Bat ears dampen in time with each call, and even insects grow less responsive to their own rhythms after long exposure. The theme is constant. Ignore the ordinary. Stay ready for the unusual. That strategy turns noise itself into a form of safety. A steady chorus of crickets means no bat has struck. A pond in full voice means no heron is stalking. A bat colony's soft chatter says no hawk is circling. Geese and ducks use soft contact calls as they settle, and the ongoing murmur reassures them all is well. If those calls stop abruptly, heads lift at once. If they continue, eyelids droop and rest deepens. In this calculus, noise is not the enemy. It's a signal of normality, the reassurance that nothing out of the ordinary is happening. Noise is not always a curse. In fact, for many species, it becomes part of the architecture of sleep. A murmur in the colony, a steady chorus in the pond, or the rhythmic sweep of wings overhead serves as a lullaby. Background against which danger becomes obvious only when the pattern breaks. What seems to us like chaos is, to them, the assurance of normality. And this truth folds into yet another strategy for rest: sharing it. Sleep can be solitary, but often it is collective. Bodies pressed together change the math of survival. A heap of meerkats deep in the desert is more than comfort. It is physics. As the sun drops, they retreat into burrows, chambers connected by winding tunnels that hold the day's heat. Inside, the air is still, the sand walls act as insulation, and the bodies pile together in striped knots. Pups are tucked into the center, shielded by layers of kin. The geometry reduces the surface area exposed to the air, conserving warmth that no single animal could hold alone. Social thermoregulation means the difference between shivering through the night and waking restored. Even vigilance is divided. Outer bodies stir first at a rustle, rippling arousals inward, while those at the core remain in deeper slumber. Above ground, they extend this choreography into the day. One individual climbs onto a rock to watch. Sentinel duty rotating from one to another, so the cost of vigilance is spread fairly. Grooming, scent marking, and shifting dens counter the risks of parasites and pathogens, turning what might be a liability of closeness into a workable system. Penguins practice the same lesson on an epic scale. In the Antarctic night, hundreds of emperor fathers huddle to protect their fragile eggs. Each balances the shell on his feet, shielding it with a brood pouch against temperatures that would kill in minutes. The huddle becomes a cathedral of feathers, its interior far warmer than the air outside. But it is not static. Birds on the edge inch their way toward the core, while those at the core yield their place outward. This rotation keeps the system fair, ensuring that no individual is sacrificed to the cold. Waves of shifting positions ripple across the mass like a living tide, each penguin responding to local cues rather than central command. Physiology does its part. Vascular systems constrict blood flow to exposed extremities, while countercurrent exchanges preserve warmth. Within this shifting fortress, sleep arrives in many short bouts, fragmented but sufficient. Heads droop, eyes close, and the murmur of neighbors becomes the background hum of survival. Bats, meanwhile, turn the principle indoors. Maternity colonies cluster in caves, attics, and hollow trees by the thousands. Hanging close together lowers each mother's energetic cost of keeping warm and feeding young. But the trade-off is clear. Damp caves harbor parasites and microbes. The solution is fluidity. Colonies split and fuse, switch roosts, and rotate locations, denying parasites a permanent hold. Grooming clears ectoparasites, while synchronous arousals ripple through clusters like shockwaves, disrupting pathogens and shifting microclimates. Even here, closeness is a bargain struck carefully. Warmth against disease, balanced by behavior. The pattern repeats across species. Huddle when it is cold, spread when it is hot. Rotate roles so everyone shares the burden. Penguins vent steam through gaps. Meerkats sprawl instead of heap in summer. Bats move to cooler roosts when heat builds. The logic is never maximal closeness. It is optimal closeness, always tuned to the invisible arithmetic of temperature, parasites, and energy. Social rules enforce fairness. Pups take the warm center. High-ranking females get the best seats, and rotations prevent dominance from turning deadly. Contact calls hum through groups, reassuring each member that the system holds. Scent, sound, and touch weave individuals into something larger than themselves, a living quilt stitched together by patience and small adjustments. For parents, the burden is even heavier. Raising young rewrites the schedule of rest, tearing up the old blueprint and drafting a new one stitched from fragments. Seabirds show the compromise sharply. During courtship, they doze on ledges or float on the sea. Once chicks arrive, everything changes. Adults on narrow ledges nap one hemisphere at a time, one eye open to the colony. Their rest shrinks to seconds, a tilt of the neck, a flutter beneath a closed lid before another scan of the horizon. Out at sea, albatross and petrels catch brief naps on the swell or in flight, but shallower than at any other time of year. Sleep debt accumulates, repaid only when chicks grow stronger or threats subside. Penguins fold cold into the bargain. An emperor father, egg balanced on his feet, rarely enters deep rest. His sleep is shallow and scattered, interrupted whenever the huddle shifts. Other penguins, tending chicks near the sea, rest in quick snatches between brooding and foraging trips. Neighbors' noise serving as lullaby and alarm alike. Lions prove that even apex predators bend to parental demand. A lioness without cubs may sprawl for hours in golden heaps. With cubs in a den, she becomes restless, lifting her head every few breaths, repositioning against the wind, testing the air for scent. Her sleep fractures into fragments, traded for vigilance. If danger presses, she moves the cubs one by one to new hiding spots. Rest sacrificed to survival. Sisters synchronize births, pooling cubs into communal creches, and rotate guarding duties. But even then, sleep remains shallow. It is never the deep, luxurious rest of lions without young. At sea, the challenge is greater still. Dolphins and porpoises with newborn calves abandon full sleep entirely. Calves are born lean, unable to thermoregulate, so mother and calf swim almost constantly, the calf tucked in echelon beside the mother's flank, riding her slipstream. Motion keeps them warm and safe. Here, unihemispheric sleep becomes a lifeline. The mother lets one half of her brain rest, while the other steers, eye open to the waves. The calf, still learning, mimics her rhythm, the duet of wakefulness and rest stitched into motion. For weeks, they live this way, trading depth for survival until the calf grows strong enough to pause. Everywhere, the lesson repeats. Sleep bends but does not break. It fragments into micronaps, shuffles through rotations, splits across hemispheres, or shrinks to seconds between alarms. But it is never abandoned. Even the lightest rest carries the marks of its purpose, repairing cells, resetting thresholds, recalibrating synapses, refreshing immune defenses. The form may vary, but the function remains. Dreams shrink or vanish. REM pares itself down. Slow waves fracture, yet still the body insists on moments of release. Sleep is too ancient, too essential, to be cast aside, no matter how sharp the risks. And in that resilience lies its strange beauty. The meerkat huddle, the penguin rotation, the bat cluster, the lioness at her den, the dolphin swimming half awake. Each reveals a different compromise, a different geometry of survival. Taken together, they show that sleep is not fragile. It is robust, flexible, and endlessly inventive. Life will always find a way to rest, even when rest seems impossible. The balance between vigilance and rest often plays out most vividly in the lives of parents, where the needs of the young bend the natural rhythms of sleep into new and extraordinary shapes. For dolphins, whales, seals, and sea otters, parenthood is a test not only of endurance, but of the ability to rewrite biology itself. A dolphin mother must never let her calf drift too far or sink too deep. And so, she reshapes her very brain's patterns of rest. One hemisphere sleeps. The other stays awake to guide slow, deliberate arcs through the water, to surface for breath, to scan for the glimmer of predators or passing boats. For the calf, it is a mirror image, an early life spent almost entirely in motion, hovering on the slipstream of its mother's flank, snatching small fragments of rest while nursing, gliding, and learning how to breathe. To human eyes, it looks like sleep has been nearly erased. But what's really happening is a transformation into something new, a state of partial stillness, enough to recover, but never enough to let the world slip by unnoticed. Whales scale the same balancing act to their vast proportions. A humpback mother, guiding her calf through coastal shallows, finds quiet in parallel drifting, the calf nestled close while the mother hovers between sleep and wakefulness. She takes her rest in fragments, teaching breath rhythm in the pauses, shielding the calf with her body, alternating halves of her brain so that vigilance is never lost. Orcas, too, tighten their pods when calves are small. Adults collectively drop their sleep thresholds, spreading the burden of vigilance across many minds, each lowering its guard just enough that others can afford to drift deeper. The shared watchfulness of the pod becomes a kind of insurance, ensuring that even in those restless early weeks, no calf is left unprotected. Pinnipeds invent their own solutions, toggling between sea and shore, depending on what the moment demands. A fur seal mother at sea may drift dive, slipping into brief spells of sleep while suspended in the water column. She may even lean on unihemispheric rest to keep her heading steady, one side of the brain vigilant enough to steer, while the other catches fragments of slow waves. Back on land, her body pressed close to a pup, she sleeps only lightly and in short stretches, waking at the smallest nudge, always ready to nurse, groom, or shield. Elephant seals pile onto crowded beaches, where mothers keep a restless watch for lumbering males whose disputes could crush a pup. Sleep there is fractured, shallow, stitched together from moments between danger and noise. Sea otters cradle their pups against their bellies, wrapping them in strands of kelp so they don't drift. The mothers nap lightly, waking often to groom the dense fur that keeps the pup buoyant and warm, trading their own deep rest for vigilance. How do these mothers endure so little conventional sleep without collapsing? Part of the answer lies in the architecture of their brains. Unihemispheric sleep is nature's compromise, a way to breathe, to steer, and to stay alert, while still giving half the mind a chance to sink into the rhythms of recovery. Birds guarding chicks use the same trick, closing one eye while the other scans the horizon. Chemistry lends another hand. Hormones like prolactin and oxytocin rise in the parental body, shifting thresholds of fatigue, deepening bonds, sharpening senses. Stress hormones hover higher, lending a constant edge to awareness, though at a cost to the depth of rest. And then there is efficiency. When sleep is scarce, every minute becomes more potent. Brain waves grow heavier, slower, squeezing more restoration into less time. When the urgent season of parenthood passes, rebound begins. Seabirds reclaim longer nights when chicks fledge. Lionesses sink into deeper naps once cubs can follow the pride. Dolphins return to fuller rhythms when calves can swim strongly and breathe without constant guidance. Sleep debt is paid not in a single binge, but in the gradual thickening of nights across weeks and months. These strategies reveal an almost tender arithmetic of survival. Every choice, a ledge tucked out of the wind, a den with confusing entrances, a sheltered bay with softer tides, buys a few more minutes of rest or a fraction more safety. Across days, those small choices add up to survival. The seabird parent running on fractured micronaps still returns with fish. The lioness who dozed lightly all night still explodes into a sprint. The dolphin mother who hasn't stopped moving in weeks still nudges her calf into its perfect breath. Sleep bends, fragments, and reshapes itself under the weight of care, but it never disappears. It waits for the moment when the chick's feathers thicken against the wind, when a cub grows strong enough to match the pride, when a calf's blubber seals in warmth. Then slowly, the nights lengthen again, deepening like water settling after a storm. Yet the story of parental compromise is only part of sleep's strangeness. In the reefs and shallow seas, octopuses and cuttlefish carry their mysteries into the night, revealing perhaps the closest thing to dreams, outside of mammals and birds. Watch an octopus at rest in its den, and its skin blooms with rapid bursts of color. A flush of velvet black, a ripple of mottled sand, a flare of bold stripes. Chromatophores, tiny sacs of pigment encircled by muscle, expand and shrink in lightning flashes, painting patterns across the mantle. Beneath them, reflective iridophores and scattering leucophores add shimmer and depth, turning the skin into a living canvas. These sequences appear not in waking camouflage, but during what scientists call active sleep, a phase where the body is still yet twitches, siphons flutter, and colors pulse in startling bursts. No predator has approached. Prey scuttles nearby. The only thing moving is the story inside. Scientists cannot yet say whether an octopus truly dreams, but the behavior is tantalizing. Some suggest these bursts are rehearsals, neural replays of hunts or escapes, just as rats dreaming in REM replay the paths of a maze. Others think the patterns are maintenance, a systems check for the chromatophore network, flexing the muscles and neurons to keep them sharp. Perhaps the color storms are simply a spillover, incidental echoes of a brain that fires in rapid bursts while asleep. Whatever the reason, the sight of sleeping skin alive with remembered patterns is a rare glimpse into the hidden interior of a mind so different from our own. Fish have their own palettes of the night. Many reef species pale as darkness deepens, their bright daytime hues fading into pastels that soften their outlines. Some adopt specialized night uniforms. Butterfly fish darken the area around their eyes and lighten their bodies, creating a false head that confuses predators. Parrotfish tuck themselves into crevices and wrap their bodies in mucus cocoons, a translucent shield that hides scent and deters parasites. Pelagic fish drifting in the open water dial down saturation, hovering with minimal fin flicks, their color subdued, their bodies slower to respond unless danger presses close. The chemistry behind these night palettes is elegant in its simplicity. Darkness triggers the rise of melatonin, which whispers to tissues that it is time to rest. Pigment cells gather their color inward, lightening the skin without conscious effort. If startled, neural commands override the hormonal drift in seconds, snapping color back into sharp contrast. For seafloor sleepers, stillness is camouflage. For reef fish, fading into pastel is safety. And for cephalopods, the color bursts of active sleep are a risk willingly paid, suggesting that whatever happens inside the brain during those pulses is worth being seen. Even their skin itself joins the dance. Octopus skin is not only display, but sensor, laced with proteins akin to visual pigments that detect light. Not enough to see, but enough to sense brightness. A resting octopus may adjust its tone to match a passing shadow or moonbeam, keeping itself aligned with its surroundings even in slumber. Yet the most dramatic displays, the flickering murals of active sleep, appear even in dens or under moonless skies, pointing to an internal clock, not an external cue. The colors of sleep are dictated by physics as much as biology. Under a full moon, reefs glow with sharp shadows, predators prowling by sight and prey dimming their hues to avoid standing out. Under a new moon, the sea is ink black, bioluminescence betraying any twitch. Stillness becomes the safest costume, patterns abandoned for simplicity. In wave-swept shallows, light strobes with every swell, and so many fish wedge themselves into calm alcoves, refusing the flicker's invitation to move. Where humans bring artificial light, the script falters. Street lamps along coasts and harbors smear night into a permanent twilight. Fish stay vivid longer, delaying rest. Cephalopods shift their cycles, their bursts compressed or delayed. Hatchling turtles crawl toward neon instead of moonlit surf. The night's natural cues blur, and with them, the delicate schedules of rest. Even here, nature bends but does not break. Pigment cells, muscles, and hormones keep pulling toward a rhythm of day and night. The reef still fades into a softer spectrum when the world grows dark. The octopus still blooms and fades with inner storms. A butterfly fish still lifts its night mask at dawn. These are the palettes of rest, understated, muted, economical. The letters a fish writes to the night read, "Nothing to see here," while an octopus scrawls fleeting, indecipherable notes across its mantle. that may or may not be dreams. And as the first rays of daylight press into the water, the night's palette dissolves. Melatonin falls. Pigments spread. Stripes and bars return. The parrotfish cracks its mucus cocoon and flushes turquoise. A cuttlefish stirs, gives one last ripple, and slides into daylight patterns built for hunting. Night recedes, and with it, the strange, secret colors of sleep. The night used to fall as a certainty, a vast and reliable darkness that cued bodies to slow, to hush, to fold into rhythms that restored them for the next day. Now, in much of the modern world, true night is scarce. Street lamps, billboards, windows, and floodlit arenas stitch the horizon into a false twilight. The glow spills out beyond the roads and rooftops, draping over wetlands, fields, coasts, and forests. To us, this glow may feel harmless, even reassuring. To animals, it is information, and their bodies take it literally. Light says day, and when it comes at the wrong hours, the clocks that govern sleep falter. Hormones slip out of sync, patterns scatter. What should be deep stretches of rest shrink into restless fragments. Urban birds reveal the effect first and most clearly. Along lit streets, blackbirds sing earlier and later, their mornings pulled forward, their evenings stretched out. Melatonin, the hormone that normally rises with darkness and primes the body for rest, never climbs as high. The result is a kind of permanent jet lag. Sleep is not erased, but it is scattered into broken pieces, riddled with arousals at the sweep of headlights or the flare of a lamp. Migrants face an even sharper danger. Drawn by the halo of towers and stadiums, they veer off course, circling in confusion, burning through fat reserves they cannot replace. They arrive at stopovers exhausted, carrying a sleep debt that bends their judgment and dulls the reflexes that should keep them safe. A tired migrant does not just sing poorly. It may misjudge a rival, fail to navigate, or stumble into a predator's grasp. Bats live along the same glowing edges. Many avoid bright streets altogether, their ancestral foraging routes fractured by light. Others exploit the insects that gather under lamps, thriving while their light-shy cousins shrink back. But even those winners pay a cost. Roosts close to human lighting grow restless. A single floodlight that spills into a crevice is enough to stir a maternity colony. Mothers waking again and again, using calories they cannot spare to resettle pups. For light-averse species, the change is harsher still. Foraging ranges grow longer, routes detour, and the corridor between roost and hunting ground stretches thin. Insects carry much of the burden. A moth that should rest under a leaf finds itself spiraling endlessly around a bulb, wasting the night's energy, exposing itself to predators that patrol the glow. Nocturnal pollinators shift away from flowers left in shadow, breaking delicate chains of reproduction. Even when they find refuge, the light still seeps in, blurring the border that should push their bodies into quiescence. Instead of sinking into recovery, they fidget, misled by a glow that says, "Stay awake." Amphibians feel the change in their skin as much as their eyes. A pond lit by roadside lamps grows quieter. Frogs, normally booming in chorus, fall to scattered calls. Courtship shrinks. The silence robs males of mates and robs females of choices. The short pauses between calls, brief moments where a frog might otherwise dip into shallow rest, are squeezed away, leaving the night full of vigilance but poor in restoration. Salamanders pause more often along lit paths, their journeys stretched into long, anxious halts that cut down the hours left for real rest underground. Along coastlines, light scrambles one of the most ancient sleep-linked behaviors, sea turtle nesting. Hatchlings that should crawl toward the shimmer of moonlit surf, instead, veer toward hotels and roads, guided by a brightness their instincts cannot interpret. Adults, too, change course. Some delay nesting altogether, waiting for darker nights that never come, or abandoning attempts when the sand never feels safe. Fish drifting under piers hold their colors vivid longer than they should, their rest deferred, their bodies exposed in waters made brighter than any natural moon. In every case, what looks like a small cue to us, a lamp, a billboard, becomes an entire false environment for a creature whose body is tuned to the truth of night. Noise joins the assault. The city hums, buzzes, and shouts, a tide of sound that rarely ebbs. To an animal trying to rest, predictability matters more than volume. A steady drone becomes background, but novelty is expensive. A single siren, a sudden horn, a dog bark can jolt a sleeper into shallow stages or full wakefulness. Roosting birds near highways lift their heads more often and for longer. Bat colonies tucked into bridges startle at irregular bangs and clanks. Small mammals whose social calls rely on precise frequencies find them masked by the constant human din. They shout louder, call more often, burning energy that should have gone to rest. Even in hidden nests and burrows, novelty seeps in, breaking the fragile rhythms that sleep needs to work. The costs of chronic sleep disruption are harder to see in the wild than in a laboratory, but they are no less real. For a bird, it might mean a missed step in migration. For a bat, a pup that grows slower. For a deer, a bedding site chosen poorly because its fogged brain misread quiet for safety. Sleep debt looks like hesitation, clumsiness, and mistakes the world does not forgive. Yet sleep is resilient, and recovery is possible. Conservationists have learned that even small shifts help. Shielding lamps so their glow falls only downward preserves real darkness beyond the path. Choosing warmer amber tones reduces the blue light that most powerfully misaligns clocks. Motion sensors cut needless hours of glare, letting true night return between footsteps. Cities that dim towers during migration turn the skies darker, safer, allowing millions of wings to pass overhead without confusion. The hush can be designed, too. Slower roads, quieter surfaces, and buffers of vegetation all soften the human roar. Parks and reserves with true night hours, no drones, no amplified music, no wandering off paths, become sanctuaries where animals trust the dark again. Protecting the wild's sleep does not always sound like saving a forest or a species, but the dividends spread quietly. A bird that rests well navigates more cleanly. A bat that sleeps deeply feeds a heavier pup. A fox that wakes sharp hunts with fewer wasted sprints. Sleep protects entire populations by multiplying small advantages across generations. When we give back darkness and hush, we give back competence, memory, health, and survival. Some corners of this science verge on stage magic. Pigeons wearing tiny headsets, seals mailing back data from the middle of nowhere, octopuses flashing colors in their dreams, yet each trick is real, each device careful, and each revelation teaches us how far sleep can bend when life insists on odd hours and odder places. A pigeon in its feather-light cap reveals brainwaves that toggle between slow, rolling tides and sharp bursts of wake-like rhythm. A row of birds on a perch will share safety with their very hemispheres, the outer birds keeping one eye open, the inner ones melting into deeper rest. Safety is not just a feeling. It is measured in brain waves, shared by bodies pressed together on a wire. Seals teach a different lesson, one written in depth traces and accelerometers. At sea, elephant seals are champions of the drift dive nap. They descend, stop stroking, and surrender to the ocean's carry. The body goes limp, brain rhythms slide into sleep, and for a handful of minutes the animal rests in free fall. Then motion returns, a tilt, a stroke, a surface. The diary of dives reveals astonishingly little total rest, yet enough to keep reflexes sharp and hunts precise. Fur seals toggle their strategies. On land, they sleep like typical mammals, both hemispheres off together. At sea, they compromise, one hemisphere at a time, keeping the body swimming while the mind recovers in halves. Each of these animals, from pigeons to pinnipeds, proves that sleep is not fragile. It bends to pressure, fragments under noise, shrinks under danger, but it adapts. The cycles of restoration find cracks to seep into, moments to stretch, and partners to share the burden. The truth that emerges is not that sleep can be skipped, but that it can be remade, piece by piece, to suit the impossible demands of life. A dolphin swims with half a brain awake. A penguin rotates through a living huddle. A seal naps mid-dive. A pigeon guards with one hemisphere, while its flockmate truly dreams. Each adaptation says the same thing in its own language. Rest is not optional, but it is endlessly creative. The strangeness of these adaptations is not the point. The point is that they work. They keep calves alive, guide migrants home, let colonies endure winters, and balance the impossible arithmetic of safety and repair. In the end, sleep is not a luxury. It is a rhythm, old and unyielding, dressed in endless costumes, half-brains, hidden dens, drifting dives, feathered huddles, and the colors of an octopus's skin. However life twists it, sleep endures, because without it, even the fiercest hunter and the most devoted parent would stumble. With it, however fractured, however brief, the living world keeps rising again each dawn. In heavy swell or in shipping lanes that rumble like a constant storm, sleep contracts into fragments. In calm, it stretches back out, deeper, longer, a reminder that rest itself is sensitive to the weather. What researchers discover in weeks of recordings from seals, birds, or whales is that the ocean writes patterns into their sleep as surely as tides write patterns into sand. A rough night at sea lingers in the brain as thinner rest for days. A stretch of calm allows rebound, the slow waves lengthening, the body repairing. Even here, in places that never truly pause, animals carve out ways to let their minds sink for a while. And then there are creatures whose sleep is not hidden at all. In dark aquariums under low-light cameras, octopuses and cuttlefish reveal their inner lives in color. For long minutes, they hold steady, skin neutral, breathing even. Then suddenly, a ripple runs across the mantle like a memory unspooling. Bars of black, blushes of white, waves that look suspiciously like the camouflage tricks they use by day. Their arms curl and stretch, their eyes flick beneath lids, and for a moment, their whole bodies seem to rehearse scenes we cannot see. A hunt, a chase, a hiding place. Seconds later, it vanishes, and the body returns to stillness. The cycle repeats again later, with new combinations, like a painter testing patterns in sleep. Is this dreaming? The cautious answer is that these bursts align with active sleep, the phase in which mammals and birds most often dream. The chromatophores that make color are muscles, and they may be swept up in neural surges the way a dog's paw twitches mid-dream. Perhaps these displays are rehearsals, perhaps maintenance, perhaps only a spillover of activity from a busy brain. Whatever the explanation, the rhythms fit the hallmarks of real sleep: deeper quiescence afterward, predictable rebounds if deprived, and thresholds of arousal that match the phases of rest. If nothing else, the flickering murals of an octopus remind us that sleep is not only invisible brainwaves. Sometimes it writes its story on the skin. Behind each strange recording lies a careful negotiation. How much can we ask of an animal to learn how it sleeps? A pigeon wearing a featherweight headset, a seal carrying a satellite tag, a cuttlefish under the glow of an infrared lens. Each carries a burden, however small. The ethics of sleep research are not abstract. A tag must be light enough to disappear into daily life, streamlined enough not to cost energy, clever enough to release when its job is done. Electrodes mean anesthesia and recovery. Housing must be dark enough for an owl's eyes, rich enough for an octopus to build a den, spacious enough for a seal to dive. Because cramped, bored, or stressed animals do not sleep as their wild kin do. The field has shifted toward gentler designs. Better cameras, quieter microphones, machine learning that can sift signals from noise without constant handling. Every generation of tools aims to disturb less, measure more, and vanish into the background of ordinary life. The guiding rule is simple: disturb as little as possible, learn as much as you can, then let the animal go back to being the expert. The pigeon will keep its one bright eye on watch. The seal will drift into the ocean's slow elevator. The octopus will paint its private murals unseen. Our role is to glimpse, note, and dim the lights. Most of the time, sleep unfolds beautifully, but sometimes it falters, and the signs are hard to miss. A paw that paddles wildly, a tail that thrashes against furniture, a body that bolts upright as if chased by something only it can see. The machinery of sleep is intricate, and when it slips, the effects are dramatic. What looks like sleepwalking in pets is usually not the true disorder. Puppies that twitch and whimper are simply dreaming. Older animals that pace at night may be restless from pain or anxiety, not sleepwalking at all. True somnambulism, deep non-REM sleep mixed with unconscious automatic movement, is rare in animals and hard to confirm without recordings. Seizures can mimic it, and so can nighttime wandering in confusion. A better documented problem is REM behavior disorder, when the protective paralysis of REM fails. Instead of lying still while dreams run, the animal acts them out. Dogs leap, snap, or gallop in their sleep. Cats stalk, pounce, or swat at invisible prey. The episode ends abruptly with full wakefulness, the animal blinking as if the dream dissolved into the room. In people, this disorder is sometimes a warning sign of neurodegeneration. In animals, the long-term meaning is less clear, but the episodes are real, and they carry risks of injury. Veterinarians manage safety first: soft bedding, blocked stairs, then explore treatment. Do wild animals suffer the same disorders? Evidence is fragmentary. Camera traps catch a fox thrashing in its den. Zoo notes describe dream enactments in big cats, but rigorous diagnosis in the wild is rare. Marine mammals complicate the picture. Their half-brain sleep already bypasses normal REM paralysis. Birds sleeping with one hemisphere awake can twitch and shift without entering classic REM at all. The best we can say is that dream enactment episodes do occur, especially under stress or illness, but we rarely capture them outside captive settings. Insomnia is more familiar. In pets, it often comes from pain, itch, anxiety, or age-related cognitive decline. A dog with arthritis shifts and paces. A cat with skin irritation scratches itself awake. An older pet with dementia wanders, its internal clock scrambled. Thunderstorms, fireworks, separation, all can fracture sleep into shards. Wild animals face their own versions. Artificial light keeps birds awake when they should be still. Urban noise interrupts deep rest with unpredictable spikes. Heat waves force panting that fragments recovery. Drought drives longer, riskier searches for water. Human disturbances layer new arousals onto old instincts. What we call insomnia in them is often an attempt to cope with a world that no longer offers true safety or dark. The thread through all these disorders is cost. Sleep that is too shallow, too broken, or too short blunts reflexes, fogs decisions, dulls memory. A tired dog snaps irritably. A cat naps all day and misses play that keeps it fit. A wild bird navigates less precisely. A bat loses weight because its nursing is inefficient. The fixes are rarely exotic. Treat pain and itch. Keep nights dark and quiet. Offer steady cues to re-anchor circadian clocks. Shield lights downward. Design hideaways that feel safe. Sleep tends to repair itself once the conditions are right. The next decade of sleep science is being written with tools that sound almost like magic. Tiny microscopes light enough to ride on a bird's head, recording neurons flickering with calcium as it drifts into REM. Ultrasound, tuned so sensitively, it can map slow waves rolling through deep brain structures. Flexible, wireless EEG caps that record whole nights without tethers. AI models trained to sift millions of accelerometer readings and pick out the signature of a seal's micronap mid-dive. Tags that can now analyze their own data in real time, saving only what matters, stretching battery life from days to weeks. Field cameras that watch cuttlefish through the night and automatically mark bursts of active sleep. Unsupervised algorithms that discover new microstates, hinting that even our neat categories of REM and non-REM are umbrellas for many patterns yet unnamed. With power comes new questions. A tag that weighs only a gram still taxes a swallow. A scope mounted on a mouse still changes how it moves. The good practice is restraint. Lighter devices, shorter deployments, smoother designs, and transparent reports of the costs imposed. Captive setups demand their own care. Tanks must be big enough, enclosures natural enough, darkness deep enough. A cramped or noisy space bends results into artifacts. The standard is refinement. Let the animal sleep the way it would choose to, then measure. Sleep research, like sleep itself, is learning to tread more gently. The future is not heavier gadgets, but lighter ones. Sensors that listen without tugging. Cameras that see without blinding. Algorithms that decode without forcing stress. Add to that a culture that prizes the 3 R's. Replace, reduce, refine. And what we get is clearer data and kinder science. Meanwhile, night continues to move like a tide around the planet, drawing every creature into its pull. In rainforests, twilight thickens into green shadows and the canopy exhales into stillness. Birds tuck heads beneath wings, frogs settle onto leaves, bats lift into the dusk, and ants dim their march. In deserts, the heat sighs out of the sand, foxes curl into shallow scrapes, gerbils dash and return, flowers close, or open to moths whose wings already hum in the starlight. On polar ice, darkness lingers for weeks, and penguins trade warmth and wakefulness in a living rotation. In summer, the sun refuses to set, and sleep breaks into fragments timed to the body's clock, not the sky's. Grasslands breathe in waves, Herds bed down in ripples of heads, lowering and rising. Owls take the night shift. Lions rest light or deep, depending on the hunt. Small antelope fold their legs and paws, every rustle a test. Mountains keep their own rhythm. Goats balance on ledges. Bats stream back into caves before dawn. Rivers murmur without caring whether it is day, and trout hover in eddies to let their metabolism slow. And as you listen now, your own breathing folds into that same tide. Somewhere, forests are settling, deserts are cooling, ice is tightening, the deep sea is turning unseen pages. Somewhere in that map, you are another sleeper in the weave, sharing the same old bargain with the dark. Close your eyes if they are heavy. The world will keep its watch. Morning will find you, as it finds everything else, rested enough to begin again. For all its resilience, sleep sometimes falters. Nights meant for restoration can become tangled in disorders. Pet owners often describe their dogs or cats as sleepwalking, but in truth, most of what they observe are twitches from dreams or nighttime pacing from pain or anxiety. True somnambulism, sleepwalking that emerges from deep non-REM states, is rare in animals. Puppies paddling their paws or kittens chirping are simply showing fragments of dream play. Older pets wandering at night are often restless from arthritis, itching, or cognitive decline rather than sleepwalking. Even seizures can masquerade as nighttime wandering. Real somnambulism, where awareness is low and movements are automatic, appears uncommon in non-human animals. A better-known condition is REM behavior disorder. In healthy REM, the brain is lively, but the body is safely still. A protective paralysis keeps dreams contained. When that fails, sleepers can act out their dreams. Dogs may snap at phantom prey or suddenly leap into galloping motions. Cats may pounce at nothing, swatting imaginary rivals. The animal often wakes abruptly, wide-eyed, confused, as if the film in its head has spooled straight into the room. These episodes tend to occur during REM-heavy parts of the night and vanish once the animal is fully awake. The parallels to human cases are striking, though in people, REM behavior disorder can signal future neurological disease, while in animals, the long-term consequences remain less clear. Veterinarians focus on safety first, soft bedding, barriers against falls, and minimizing injury. Some cases ease with stress management, others need medication. The key distinction is that these behaviors, dramatic though they are, differ from ordinary dream twitches by their intensity and coherence. Insomnia, too, shadows the animal world. In pets, it is often secondary to pain, itch, anxiety, or medical conditions. A dog with arthritis may pace restlessly through the night. A cat tormented by fleas may scratch until exhaustion. Thunderstorms or fireworks leave many animals on edge, their sleep fragmented into useless shards. In senior dogs, cognitive dysfunction disrupts circadian rhythms entirely, leading to nighttime wandering and confused vocalizations. In wildlife, insomnia emerges in different guises. Artificial light suppresses melatonin, stretching wakefulness into hours when the body expects dark. Urban noise scatters unpredictable alarms that drag sleep toward the surface. Heat waves force panting that interrupts rest. Parasites, drought, and human disturbance chip away at depth and continuity. None of these animals chooses to sleep badly. They are simply doing their best under pressures that bend physiology out of shape. Meanwhile, the frontiers of research are expanding. Tools once confined to labs are becoming gentler, lighter, and more revealing. Miniaturized microscopes ride on freely moving mice, capturing the flicker of neurons during sleep cycles. Functional ultrasound tracks blood flow with subtlety, while ultra-thin electrode arrays record hundreds of neurons at once. Wireless EEG caps allow natural sleep studies without tethering. Out in the field, accelerometers and GPS tags now generate torrents of data that artificial intelligence sorts into patterns. A duck napping one-eyed at the edge of a flock, a seal sliding into drift dive sleep. Camera traps, thermal sensors, and sound arrays map the rhythms of colonies without intrusion. These technologies expose sleep not just as a global state, but as a mosaic of microstates, a conversation between brain regions that shifts from moment to moment. Yet with power comes responsibility. A tag that weighs a few grams can still shape behavior in a small bird. A scope strapped to a head changes how an animal moves. A tank too small or a corridor too noisy can warp results. The ethics of sleep science now demand refinement. Lighter devices, shorter deployments, naturalistic enclosures, recognition of cephalopods and decapods as sentient beings deserving welfare protections. The aim is clear: let animals sleep as they would choose to sleep, and learn from that natural rhythm rather than forcing an artificial one. What emerges from these studies is not just data, but perspective. Sleep is not a uniform block of silence. It is a flexible, adaptive state that bends to danger, to noise, to light, to parenting, to migration, and even to the demands of our curiosity. Protecting it is not just kindness, it is conservation. A dark corridor linking roosts and rivers can be as vital as the roost itself. Quiet hours in city parks can matter as much as acreage. Sleep is not a resource to exploit, but a living process to respect. And so, the journey through the world of sleep comes full circle, from pigeons wearing tiny headsets, to seals napping mid-dive, to octopuses painting their skins in bursts of color. Every creature has shown us that rest is not weakness, but strategy. Night moves like a tide across forests, deserts, grasslands, oceans, and cities, and life moves with it, crafting 1,000 ways to close its eyes. To understand those ways is to glimpse resilience itself, and to protect them is to honor the truth that life in all its forms is sharpest in the morning, after it has dared to let go for the night.